We're live, Terry.
Hi, everybody.
Hey,
Hi,
everybody.
Nancy Jean.
How you doing?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm okay. I go tomorrow to get my body to start to be adjusted to fix my wrist back, but
What are they going to do? Are you,
it's a they're gonna do it's gonna be chiropractic care and acupuncture, and they're gonna start with she's got the X-rays now and she can see where the pinched nerve is in my neck, but it's classic pinched nerve stuff because everybody I've talked to said, "Oh, I had that once and I just went and got a couple adjustments and it was gone."
wow.
and and they do acupuncture there, and I respond really well to acupuncture. I'm looking forward to that part.
Yeah, I do too. I love acupuncture. I like, I got a Reiki practitioners when I was in Sedona.
Oh,
So I
really?
am a Reiki practitioner now. So, I'd be happy to send you some Reiki too.
Oh, good. Good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've got a lovely suggestion today in the mail about how to heat up vinegar and make vinegar wraps, and that a lot
Oh,
of people do that to dislodge this. So I'll go around smelling like a salad, but I'll be feeling better.
yeah. My mom had a friend, Doc. We called him, and we called it Doc's juice, and it was some form of smelly sock juice, and
Mhm.
it was horrible. Anyway, but yeah, we always had something soaked in
Well,
that.
I did some when it first started up. I did some magnesium spray on it, and then I didn't even have to wear a wrist thing in the during the day. But it's just the whatever's happening up there has gotten past the point that the magnesium spray, unless I carry the bottle with me and hit it every 5 minutes,
Mm,
it's going to help. I'm a great believer in anything but pills.
yeah, yeah, I am too. But there are opportunities where pills helps. That's
Oh no, if you got to have a pill, guy, you got to have a pill.
yeah,
They're
yeah.
talking about a new pneumonia that's hitting children. And if you have a
Oh,
child who has a low grade cough for longer than a week, they're telling you to get them to their pediatrician or a pediatrician because it's a low grade pneumonia and they can't treat it with a normal round of antibiotics. They have to rotate them.
I know so many adults that have had this, and I don't know what they call it, but they've had that cough for a long, long time.
Hmm.
So yeah, that makes perfect sense that that's out there.
So now that we've given you, and this is for entertainment purposes only, and if you choose to follow any of this advice, it's not my fault. I didn't force you. But we are going to talk about some interesting advice, aren't we, Miss?
We are, and as usual, we don't really know what we're going to do until the very beginning. But Nancy Jean knows more. She always comes prepared. So um, I love what you came up with in the talking about going through emotions and
Right.
going through stages of
we were
energy.
we were talking about this emotional frequency scale, which everybody's seen by now, and this is the one that it's a triangle when you get my if you get my dowsing chart, so you can check where you are. But the problem I have with this chart is it looks like it's stair steps that you go through, and if you get up to grateful, there's no way you're going to get to doubt and worry again, and that's not true. And it also, for those of us who suffer from terminal perfectionism, um, if we're not ungrateful, oh my God, if our numbers aren't up to here, oh my God, if something's triggered us for that day, it's almost a disincentive to look at what caused that to happen. And I had I had another chart that covered the same material and I couldn't find it. So this is the best I could find this morning for Terry and I. When we're talking about our emotions, we're really talking about the blind man and the elephant. It's like, which part of the elephant did I wake up next to today? Is it the spiky, thorny thing, the trunk? Is it the rope? This critter's made of rope because of the tail. Is it the big floppy ears? And God knows what you think when you touch the trunk. And it's got big sturdy feet. If you've never read that poem, it's a thing you should learn as a child and remember. we don't always see things the same way, and especially if you can't see them at all. And, you know, after I saw this, I thought, yeah, it's what part of the elephant did I wake up by today? That's what I'm going to be. And once you realize that's where you are, then that's a place to start from. But it doesn't mean you have to beat yourself up because you're not at the top of the pillar.
Yeah. Yeah. Being gentle with yourself. I think sometimes if we get a big lesson that comes in and you've been on this, which everybody here has kind of been on this road for a while, and working with your intuition, working with your joy, working with trying to be healed, and you get a big lesson that comes in, sometimes it's like, well, wait a minute, I've been doing the work. What's happening here? But it does, it gives us opportunities to keep growing.
I forgot to light my candle and I can't keep going.
Okay.
I'm not a perfect person. I'm a neurotic person who wants to light her candle. Okay.
I love that. But making those changes sure does help. And it's interesting too. I love the way that elephant looked and that they were placing hands on him, because that's a very healing moment, that hand placing, with any animal. So, yeah.
Well, the other thing I ran into was it's 8 points about emotional stability. And I told Teri this weekend, besides trying to not move my hand and not shuffle cards, shuffling cards is the hardest thing with this, like it is. And that's very frustrating because, Dr. Gale said, oh, just spread them on the table and pull out 3 or 4 cards. That doesn't work for me. I want them shuffled. I want them in a stack. I want to pull them up because I've been doing it since I was 12 and I'm 75. So this is kind of a stair step down, and I have to read it because I can't remember it. But if you're looking for, these are different points you can look at, and one's not better than the other, but they're all kind of tied together. And some of them we do well, some of them we do, some of them we avoid like the plague because we're not there yet, or we were there and we decided we didn't like it when we were there. Oh, I'm sorry, Laura.
Yeah. Laura, that's horrible. So young.
That is.
Oh, honey. Yeah.
Well, Laura, you don't have to do any of this. You get a note from the doctor that says you don't have to do these things. You can if you want. But you look for emotional stability, and that's peacefulness and seeing how that can work for you. And then you show to other people unconditional kindness and compassion. And you understand that it's not your job to criticize them. It's just listen to what they're saying. And even if you think it's the stupidest way and you never handle it that way, it's their way to handle it. And don't criticize. Don't judge. Don't sit there in judgment. Be authentic and as honest as you can be. And that's where you don't wear masks and say, oh, I'm going to put my smiley face on because that fits this occasion. And I was telling Teri, I used to actually sit. I studied theater from 3rd grade on until I actually did 2 years of theater in college. And I used to actually say, okay, who am I going to be tonight? I can remember my whole college was such a facade. But, but that's the appropriate age to learn that stuff. That's why we get older, and learn to trust the world with some gratitude and some lightness. Remember that the attitude we carry into a room has ripple effects throughout that room. And I always like my ripple effects to be nice, even little like you threw a pebble in a cool lake. Unfortunately, I have gone into rooms and it's looked like Lake Michigan in January.
Yeah.
This was something this was probably one of the last things I learned how to work with well. And that was using my own intuition and trusting my own wisdom. Because I was always looking for someone to be smarter than me. And it doesn't mean there aren't a lot of people who are smarter than me, but I mean, in that session, in that moment, at that point in time, it was for me to make those decisions. And this is another one, is create healthy boundaries and figure out what's best for you. And I told him that I was laughing about this. My purpose and joy at this point is getting this stupid brace off my hand, but it's a purpose and joy. It's legitimate. Attracting lightness and gratitude and the feelings that brings in your body, that pulls in the synchronicities. Everybody said, I don't find synchronicities. Well, in actual fact, you don't find them, they find you. And they find them when you've got the right little magnet on the middle of your forehead to pull them in. And if you're working on all this stuff, you're going to get to a point where you have awareness. And we're growing into a greater awareness. Teri and I were talking about the term positivity and how that's getting kind of a bad rap, or it's getting overused, or it's getting extremely misunderstood because it's getting applied to everything. So we're looking for awareness, not perfection. Because that's the problem with this scale. When we're on this one, we think, oh my God, I need to be up here and I'm down here. And different days of your life, I don't know how y'all live, but different hours of my day, I'm at different places, and that makes sense.
Sometimes different minutes.
Oh, I know. And I've been reading some articles about, other than the wounded inner child. My wounded inner child came out and said, cut that off, bitch. I'm done. Okay.
Oh my God. I love that, Nancy Jean. That is perfect.
And so, but I read several articles, and I've downloaded one that's quite long, but it's about protecting young people from social media. And other countries Finland is about to pass a law that no 9-year-old can own a smartphone. They get them one to text to their parents and to stay in touch.
Yeah.
And they're talking about laws in England and France and all these other countries. I mean, we're going to be the last one, because we have Tim Waltz called him the dancing twit that runs social media. He's been, he's out campaigning for president. So nothing's going to happen for us until January, guys, about this. Yeah. But I really believe it, because I have my granddaughter, we have a 3-generational crime. Man, if it was the Salem witch trials, we'd all be gone. When I was in school, I had a teacher my freshman year in high school take Much Ado About Nothing, a paperback with Shakespeare's play. He took it away from me, and he told me, there's no way I could possibly understand a book of that nature. And I told my dad that night at dinner, and he said, okay, honey. And he used to take me to see Shakespeare in the park every year. So, and I woke up the next day to go to school, and my mom says, you're not going to school today. And I went, that's weird. Because my mom we had 5 kids. She really liked an empty house. And I went to school the next day, and I went to the dean's office, and I was told all my classes had been changed. My father went to the schoolhouse the next day and said, no one can tell a child to not read Shakespeare. He wasn't a really tall man, but when Larry got hut up, you didn't want to be in the same room. So I got removed. Every teacher was changed. My earth science teacher, my algebra teacher, my Latin teacher, my English teacher, I got put in, and actually they really rearranged the whole schedule. So I had an English teacher that was a personal friend of my parents that they knew would never tell me to not read a book. Well, comes to my daughter, Casey, and I get called to her school, and she's been caught reading in class. And I'm like, but isn't that why they're here? They're supposed to learn how to read. And she'd finished all her homework and stuff, but she was reading a book that the teacher decided was beyond her. And it was something like Animal Farm. And I said, she took it off my bookshelf. You know, I don't keep stuff on my bookshelf I don't think my kids should see. And I actually couldn't imagine anything. Well, there are some things I've seen as an adult since. But anyway, I just said, she has my permission to read as long as all her work's done. If her work's not done, get a hold of me. And I got a phone call from my son, Sean, that y'all know because he does the CLSB politics. He's in Wisconsin running the field program, but his daughter's in a little town outside of Austin in school. And last week, she's 10 years old. The teacher took a book away from her and said it was inappropriate for a child that age to be reading the book. And it was some true crime book. And it's probably pretty gory, but, you know, turn on your TV, you know, watch all those shows. So her mother, my ex-daughter-in-law, is the director of religious education for all Unitarian Church for the whole of the South. So she went in to talk to this teacher about censorship and censoring children's literature. And it ends up the reason the teacher was really upset about her reading the book was the teacher was reading the book. So that was her private reading time. And she just couldn't relate to the fact that she might have a 10-year-old in the room that was as smart as she was and could understand it. That has since been straightened out, and I'm sure it has because I know how Natalie works. It's been straightened out with her. So my family's a 3-generation reading in class when you should be doing other stuff, people.
Yeah. It's, you know, there's so much judgment put on us from such an early age. And the teacher's judging you. That's really rough. But then also, and it depends on the school. I know that, and they've got to have something to help out everybody. But I remember my kids going to school, and they went to private parochial schools, and there was a lot of yelling involved. Like I could hear the teachers yelling at them, and I thought, why would you say something to a child like that? Anyway, it was really hurtful, I thought, and I think it was damaging. But I kept them in there because I thought, well, surely they know more than me. But I should have pulled them. Anyway, that's a long story. But
no, I mean, and when your kid's in school, you kind of hope the teachers always work to the best. And at the time that Casey was in grade school and junior high and high school, I ran a company that redid houses. So I had business cards with me. And when I'd meet her teachers, I said, anything at all, call me. Nice. And I got to look, and they took me up on it. And Casey passed physics because she had a teacher who decided she was really smart enough to understand it. And unfortunately, he'd run into my daughter who says, I can't do that. And when she closes, that kid has a steel trap mind. It's not, none of that information is going to make it in there. She passed physics, but, and she said she used to hate it. After the night after parents' night, when she go to school and they go, oh, I just love your mother. And she's, oh, God.
Yeah, right.
Why can't I have the kind of parent who doesn't want to show up to these things?
Yeah. Yeah. Barbara says in 6th grade, she was reading books like Brave New World, 1984, and Mice and Men. Yeah. I was getting Che Guevara's book and some other books that were outlawed and getting them taken away, and wearing my little School of Metaphysics t-shirts that they were like, name one universal law and truth. And I'm like, well, I could name 12. So anyway, it's so easy to judge. And I think, and we were talking about that too, and how one of the worst things you can do for your vibration is judging and gossiping. And it does lower your frequency pretty quickly. But Laura was on here and talking about, or Lori was on here and talking about witnessing awareness. And when we just watch people where they are, and watch where we are, and watch what's happening, and being aware, it does change everything in your vibration. The more we can stay in that witnessing awareness. But there will be times when we see things that we don't care for. And that's okay to go into that anger or rage.
That's why you have to see those things so you know where to set your boundary. I'm
Yeah.
not saying those things are out there.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
definitely.
another deep dive show I'm going to do soon is on the splitting up of the nation and people becoming so polarized. And there's some really interesting information about what we consider most important, how that changes the polarization of people. And especially they go back to the founding fathers, the anti-federalists who were the ones that wrote in the things into the Bill of Rights to protect us from an all-powerful president, and how that all came about. But how, and I this is the first article I ever read that said something I have thought, which is, I was never hyper partisan during sports. And guys, I can remember when there was an NFL, but it was this little thing, and the whole world didn't stop on Sunday afternoon. It's one of the only times I ever saw my mother cry, was she'd made a lovely Sunday supper, and the football game was going long, and she didn't want her food to be spoiled. And my father yelled at her, "I'm watching my game. Leave me alone." And I can remember finding her crying, and she said, "I worked all day on that meal." And I said, "It's that stupid game." And she said, "I hate football." And I think that's part of why I learned to hate football. I also hated the fact that they wanted to turn your school against kids. I grew up in the same hometown. It got to be big enough that we had 3 high schools. Well, we actually had 5 high schools: a boys' Catholic school, a girls' Catholic school, and 3 public high schools.
Yeah.
But, and obviously the girls' schools didn't have competition, but there was all the football competition, and you had to go in, and they would break up a school day when I was going into a class I really wanted to get into because I actually done my homework, and we'd have a football team rally. I never understood why. I mean, when we won, we were in a contest play, and we won for the whole state of Illinois. They didn't have a rally for us. And I guarantee you, we worked as hard on that damn play as those guys ever worked on chasing that damn ball up and down the field. And I have a real thing about, I went to a school that was hyper partisan football. I didn't know that. And, you know, if you didn't go to the football games, and you were considered weird. So I was considered weird. But I just don't get into that, you know. And I live in Dallas when the Cowboys were at their height, and I'd have friends invite me over to have a football watching party. And I said, why? You know?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm in Kansas City, and
You got the same problem.
yeah, we do right now, but not anymore, really. My late husband was really into sports, but he'd watch anything. He'd watch girls, softball, and
Mhm.
you know, soccer, anything. He just loved all sports. He just watch anybody play anything. So anyway, Hypnicity, your family were Democrats living in a Republican neighborhood. Yeah. Yeah. My dad was pretty, he got in trouble. He wasn't allowed to go to graduation because he was reading some books, and the nuns told him, "You can't read those."
Mhm.
And he said, "Well, I am," and he did. So that was that. Anyway, but it is about standing up for our rights and what we want and what we want our kids to have. And you know, you can't think back and think poorly of yourself and poorly of how you treated your children. And as far as that, I should have stood up more. Now I wish I would have, but I got to look at that and look at it in that point where, look at how strong they are. Look at how amazing they are.
Mhm.
Instead of looking at that and thinking, gosh, if only I would have done that differently. You poor things. So,
Well, you know,
yeah,
some of it we learn when I moved from the north, and I moved from Illinois,
yeah,
which, you know, worships Lincoln, and I moved to the south, and I took history course, and I was like, where did they get these ideas from? They didn't call it the Civil War. They called it the war between the states.
Uh,
And they had written out all of the slavery part of it, which I found that must be very intellectually troubling if they think at all. And, it was, and I began to see this whole perspective of how our nation should grow. And, you know, and, and when I went home, I started to hear things I'd become sensitized to being in the South. I would hear them from my quote Yankee neighbors that weren't supposed to be that way. But my father had never run into institutional racism. If I'd have told him that word, this was in the early 70s, he would have said, that doesn't happen here. But we had a handyman that worked for our family, and he was there since I could remember. Wilson was always there. Everything that needed to get done. He had a job running a maintenance department at the Caterpillar plant, but he also had a side hustle of working for people. And when Wilson finally got too old and frail to stay on his own, and he was a Southern refugee, he was an African-American Southerner who'd come up to the North. He had no family in my hometown. I mean, what family he had was us. He always came for lunch on Christmas Eve and helped us put up the stockings and all that stuff. He was part of that part of our household. And which when I look back at it, in actual fact, was incredibly racist too. But when he got old and frail, there were certain nursing homes. So my father picked the best nursing home in town and was going to pay for it and everything. And I was talking to him on the phone, and he said, I know they have beds in there and they're not accepting Wilson. And I said, Dad, it's called institutional racism. I live in a state full of it. No one here would even question it. And people in Illinois don't, because they send them to the other homes that will, quote, accept them, even though, the care is less, because my father's a doctor. And so I said, just go tell them you are the lead physician at St. Joseph's Hospital. You just go tell them you're going to order all your doctors to not service their nursing home unless they put Wilson in there, and see how fast Wilson gets in there. And he called me the next day and he said, Wilson's moving in on Thursday.
That's great.
And I said, Daddy, you just ran into institutional racism. I'm in a state where I'm surrounded by it, but I'm beginning to understand that I was surrounded by it when I was younger. And he said, well, it just never occurred to me that there weren't Black people in there. So.
Speaking of which, I'm so proud of our President Joe Biden coming out and apologizing to Native Americans.
Yep.
About sending their kids away to those boarding schools and not letting them speak their language.
Yeah. Was to break up the tribes, but what it was really to do was to get a hold of the mineral rights in the Native American lands. It was money at the end of the day. And I'm so glad he went and did that. And I have friends who are on the native rolls. I mean, their family names are. And one of them went and had a 23andMe done kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it showed no indigenous blood. And she said, my grandmother and my mother are on the tribal rolls. And so she found out that there's another company she went to, and they found the indigenous blood. But because of the audience of 23andMe, they don't get enough people. Well, I don't know if that's true now. This was like 5 years ago. She said they don't get enough to really pull it up.
Yeah. Yeah. Janet DC is asking, she's asking Hypnicity something. Sorry. Yeah. Janet's saying Governor Pritzker is such a good person.
Mm-hmm.
Pritzker. Okay.
Yeah, he's a billionaire. He's probably the first governor they've had in there in a long time that won't go immediately from the state house to the big house. I mean, they've had such a bad run of governors in Illinois.
Yeah. Yeah. It's going around. It's going around. Anyway, so it's interesting how we can go up and down on that scale, or around and around on that scale, however you want to look at it. And yet, if we watch ourselves doing it, it changes everything. And abiding in your heart, like, what am I feeling today?
Mhm.
And doing some breath work or whatever, if you're feeling fear. And then the other thing that I like a lot is sometimes we can get fearful about anything, the upcoming election, getting in your car and driving, all sorts of different things. But if you replace that fear with curiosity, it uses a different side of your brain, and they
Mhm.
can't go hand in hand.
Mhm.
So replacing that with curiosity, like, this is interesting. Why would I be afraid of that? Just like you were talking about social discourse and people talking to
Mhm.
each other. And if you react to somebody with curiosity, if they've said something, well, that's interesting. Tell me about, where you came up with that, or what that feels like when you say that. I've heard other people do things like this, and disarm people and really change the way they think about things, even though perhaps that wasn't their intent. Reacting with curiosity and talking to them, a lot of times will really change so much and kind of open up their minds, like, well, I don't know, I never thought about that, where I got that.
That's right. And also, when you talk to somebody that sort of takes, those Japanese stage masks where they're scowling and they have blue eyes and blue mouths.
Yeah.
If you talk to someone, you sort of take that mask off their face.
Yeah.
You have to hear a different voice.
Yeah. There was, I can never remember her name. She's a Buddhist nun, and she has red hair, and she's written quite a few books.
Mhm.
Somebody here will know who it is, or you will, Nancy. But it's a anyway. She always talks about social discourse, and she wrote a book about it,
Mhm.
and how when we sit down to talk to people, yeah, reframing it, Anya. Thank you. Um, Everybody pretty much loves their family or wants the best for their family,
Mhm.
or they love, there's something that they care about. It might be their dog or their cat, right?
Mhm.
But you can always get to something with somebody that you can agree on. Like, I love my family, or I love nature.
Mhm.
And it makes a huge difference, I think. And then coming from that point. So, hey,
That's right.
Garnet. Lots of people coming in. Sharon Seib, thank you for being here.
Yes, our numbers are growing. If you want to know what we're kind of talking about, okay, we're going to add this to the stage again, Teri. Okay, we're talking
Okay.
about the emotional frequency scale. And this is the thing that if you're up at the top, it's 1,000 if you're swinging a pendulum. If you're down here at 0, your pendulum's going nowhere. And these are sort of the stages we kind of grow up through. But my thesis today is you're not always going to stay up here. You may not even there. And sometimes content gets to be a struggle. But you the problem of it, seeing it like a scale that moves up, is this is perfection, and this is when we've done everything right and it's all going to be okay, and this is when we've effed up big time and we're just swallowing in our pity and whatever. And I don't like that chart. I used to have a chart, and I cannot find it in my computer. Who's willing to try and dig around in my computer and find it, you're welcome to. But I couldn't find. There was a circle chart, and it had all those things in it, and they all float around each other. That makes a lot more sense to me. And sometimes you'll be closer to this than this, but nothing's. You're on a marked spot. So what I came up with, this is what you wake up on a certain day, and are you feeling the tail? Are you feeling the tusks? Are you feeling the ears, the trunk? This is the blind men and the elephant. And if you have never read that poem, it's a really good one to read, because we all wake up on days where it's going to be the tail, or we're going to be touching the feet or hitting the stomach and saying, what's this big lump? But it's all perspective. It's what you can feel.
Yeah, Yeah, it really is. Um, having that hands-on approach, like,
Mm-hmm.
how do I feel today? Just recognizing it when you wake up, like um, what you feel like abiding in your heart. Like when somebody asks you, how are you doing today? When you stop and think about it, everybody looks at you twice like, well, what?
Yeah, but
But
it's a
really
trick.
thinking about,
It's a trick
yeah,
question, Terry, because
it's a horrible question.
yeah, are you on the tusk or are you on the tail? I mean,
Yeah.
and right at that moment, you may not want to be assaulted that way.
Yeah. And down at the bottom where they had, or wherever you want to put it, the grief, the loss,
Mm-hmm.
the pain. And when we're in that grief and loss or fight or flight, a lot of times we're in freeze too. And that's okay, to be in that freeze where you can't really move very well or very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe you're not sure what you feel like. That's part of it. But also just trying to keep everybody alive. There's a moment in time, I know, when I was going through a lot and my husband passed, that I was just trying to keep everybody alive. I wasn't thinking any high aspirations for anybody, like have joy in your life, have fun, have
Mm-hmm.
some excitement. I was just like, just stay alive. And that's kind of what we did for a few years. And then all of a sudden, we went somewhere and we all started laughing. And I was like, oh my God, I haven't heard that in forever. That's what we need.
Mm-hmm.
But it's interesting how we can get into that freeze response. And it's a great thing that your body does and your brain does to get you through patches. But then to wake up from it again, that
Yeah,
requires witnessing.
the part of my life where I remember that the most clearly, although when my husband died, he died right before his birthday and right before Thanksgiving. And that meant right before Christmas. And we had 4 or 5 years of really devastating Christmases. My first grandchild was stillborn right at Christmas. Um, and then my husband's daughter, who was 41 or 42, died of severe alcoholism, sleeping on someone's living room floor because she totally abandoned her life. And that we got that call Christmas Day.
Mm.
Oh, that's fun. And although some funny things happened out of that. I was in charge of Crime Watch at the time for the city of Dallas. So I was trying to find out where the body was. So I was calling all the officials I knew, and I was like calling them on Christmas Day or the day after. And there's a lot of bodies that build up at Christmas, unfortunately. Anyway, her autopsy and everything just went like that. And my husband and his wife didn't get along, ex-wife didn't get along on the best of subjects. This one, there was no hope. And so they were squabbling over who was going to take care of the body and all that stuff. And my priest said to me, doesn't she have a son? I said, yeah, he's in the Navy. His mother had been dead 2 days. Those two idiots, because they were so busy fighting with each other, hadn't thought to call him. And my priest said, give me his name and what part of the service you think he's in. And they found him. They found him in 3 hours and brought Christopher up. Now, Christopher I'd raised some summers like he was one of my kids. He was in the age of my older kids. And he shows up. And I told his dad, I want to have 3 minutes alone with Christopher before y'all start in on him. Mm-hmm. And he said, well, and I said, you're going to do it. So I took him out when he came up the walk, and I took him out in the middle of the courtyard, and I told him how sorry I was that we had to meet again under these circumstances. And I said, you're the one in charge. Don't let them BS you. Now, you may want to not be the one in charge, but in actual fact, you are. And he said they'd already explained that to him at the Red Cross, because apparently my priest had explained that this was not going to be a we're all grieving and boo-hoo kind of thing. It was going to be a WWE death match. So he He was ready for it. And he just walked in and he said, she's going to be cremated, which his mother was not for because she was Catholic. And we're going to handle it this way, this way. He thought it all out before he even got there.
Perfect.
And I told him if there's any time. So one time he said, I want to go to lunch with you and Casey alone. And because they kind of grew up together. And we went and talked. We caught up with where he was. And that's the last time I ever saw him. But so we'd had a whole bunch of Christmases that were effed up by death and dying. And I'm sorry, Laura, we're bringing this up when you're in the middle of it. But anyway, after Bill died, and then my mother died, and then my father died in short order, I got an inheritance and I told the kids, we're going on a cruise. Now, we're not a cruise kind of family, guys. But so we're going on a cruise and we're going to go to the Caribbean for Christmas. And that's the most expensive time you can cruise, by the way. But I didn't care. I just wanted to take the kids and myself and get out. And I said, if the boat sinks, we're going to leave a letter that say we know it was us. And if we all get off alive, we're going to know it was just fate. And we've never had bad Christmases since. I mean, we're the age where none of us want to put up a tree and mess with all that jazz. But I put up my wreath and stuff. And you just have to pick what you can handle and what's most real to you. The most unreal thing to me is filling my house full of people I really don't want to see. You know?
Yeah. I changed I certainly changed the I don't have as much family in my neighbor or in my city as I used to, and now I just definitely changed the menu. So it's a lasagna from a nice restaurant and a big salad now. But because it's not about that, and that's kind of what I'd made it about years ago, and it was fun to do that then. But now I just want to hang with everybody.
Yeah, I mean, I had a Thanksgiving dinner that had 65 people at it.
Oh, man.
I did it with 3 other people, and we rotated through each other's condos and stuff. But
Yeah. Vicky says, my kids and I took a trip like that after my husband died. We needed that time to heal away from home. We went through 10 months of illness and 3 months of grief. So it was healing. I love that, Vicky. Yeah.
Thank you, Vicky.
Yeah. We went to Orlando. We went to Disney World. So, and that was fun. My brother was down there with his family, and
I love being on a cruise. I got a full body massage on Christmas Day. That's one of the better Christmases I've ever had.
That's a nice present. That's a gift. Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, going through all this, I guess, just understanding that we're at all times going through all different things, and that's okay. That doesn't say anything horrible about us if we go through a depression or something, and being really kind to yourself and watching where you are, and that does change how we react to these things. So Laura, I hope everything goes well for you. And I think the best thing I did for me when I was going through that grief is I made a safe space in my house, a physical space. Sofa I could sit on, and this little sunroom, and I could go in there and cry. I could go in there and watch Netflix. But I knew that when the tears started, I could scream in there or I could laugh in there. So, and it's such a metaphor, but I gave myself a safe space to be in. So we are sending you so much love, dear.
Yes. And you also need to find a safe space you can laugh in.
Yeah.
Because I would find people start to get happy around me and then, oh, she just lost her husband. Well, I've been losing him for weeks, guys.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it, isn't it? Yeah, my husband had been sick for 11 months.
Mhm.
What happened, one of my dear friends down the street, and her son had grown up at my house, and my kids had grown up at her house, and he died tragically. I think he was 18, in a car accident.
Mm.
And there were a lot of synchronicities involved, that we were at the lake, at our lake place,
Mhm.
when he passed about 2 miles away from us, and we
Mm.
could hear the sirens, we could hear everything going on, and we wondered who it was, and I knew it was somebody, and I called my friends that had been out on the lake, and they were like, "No, no, we're fine." And, but we continue to be great friends, and we would walk while all this was going on, and we had the best comedy, the best jokes together, and the best laughs together, and the best tears together.
Mhm.
It was really important that we could do that, because everybody else is coming up to you saying, "How are you?" And that's a hard thing to ask or to come back from. Yeah, laughter after grief, people don't understand. It's so much relief after crying.
Yeah, and you don't realize it until you haven't laughed for a long time, and you just sit there and laugh.
Yeah. 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 Rose says, "Mama asked me visit Christmas. Daddy's having more problems. 86 and 89. Your brother retires from the service after 39 years, and he has his family stuff in another state he's helping with." Oh, you want to move in and be in there. Yeah. Sorry, my phone's going off here. Turn that off. There we go. Anyway, yeah, it's hard, Rose, but think about that for a little while. In
Mhm.
your heart, is that what's going to make you happy?
Yeah, and then get your 2 booklets, like Dr. Gale talks about. Your gratitude book to write in every day, and your bitch book to put down the things you don't want to say to people, but you need to get them out of you.
Yeah. Yeah. Release. That's huge.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, it was a lot. It was a lot, but having friends that were going through something similar helped a lot. And then I thought for sure that I really wanted to do something to help people getting over grief.
Mhm.
And that's one reason that I started the channel. But then one of my therapists asked me, "Are you sure you want to do grief, Teri?" She's like, "That's a lot, that's a lot to go into."
Mhm.
So it's now we do a lot of different things on the channel, but grief is a big one.
And sometimes grief sneaks in, even if we start out with the blind man and the elephant.
Yep, it does. It certainly does, and that's okay. Yeah, yeah. Um,
And and I think a lot of people are grieving right now because they view our country as not a place they lived in. And that's for both sides of the political spectrum. And um,
yeah,
oh, hi, Vicky. Yeah, that happened. My son came home and found his house locked and his bank account's empty.
yeah.
Oh, dear. Well, all I can tell you is that Sean's in much better space now than he was, even when he thought he was in a good space there.
Yeah. Um, Hypnicity is concerned about Mother Earth. Um, yeah, and I know that we talk about that sometimes, hypnicity, and I feel like she's shaken us off before, and she will again if she needs to, off the planet. But I feel like we're in a golden age of science and arts that are coming in, and,
Mm-hmm.
and we're going to be able to remedy what we've done. I feel like that's coming. So, and I feel like she is so strong. She's amazing. Um,
Oh, the earth could ditch us like fleas,
yeah,
you
she,
know. And in Texas, where I live, it's been 83 or 84 or higher every day in October except for 2. And normally this time of year, it's in the 60s and 70s during the day. And Sean's up in Wisconsin, and he said, I love the weather up here. It's like crisp and clear, and the sky's clear blue. And, I said, yeah, wait till the winter. But he'll go through it because he kind of likes winter in a way, much more than his mother. But I said, maybe you should really make a deal out of staying in Wisconsin, because if this keeps staying warm like this, Wisconsin's going to look better and better, I tell you.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. We do need to bridge the divide. Yeah. Well, and it's interesting that, we think of it in terms of us or them.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the first time that I remember in our society that it's been like this. But of course it has, because we were talking about prejudice before and how that's a lot of us or them. So now it's kind of all come to the surface that
that's the only way it'll go away. I've lived in a place where everything you're hearing people say out loud and on Fox News and apparently in Madison Square Gardens, although I didn't listen to that. But they said it underground or you'd hear it, and I learned it running political campaigns because I ran a lot of minority majority candidates. They were in the majority in the districts we were running, and they'd get so used to me being there that they would forget when they would talk about how white people had treated them. And one older Black woman who was a big part of her church, she said to me, I guarantee you every day, she's the same age I am, I guarantee you every day of my life I knew what you wore, what you dressed like, because if I turned on a TV, it was there. And that's true. All of TV looked just like me when I was growing up. It was all white, first, privileged class, except the Beverly Hillbillies. And she said, but you have no idea about what our culture is like. And there was a lot to that. And my first husband's family was from North Carolina, his mother. And she'd grown up in the summers on a farm, a cotton farm and a tobacco farm. And in the early 70s, there was all this, we're going to all get together and we're all going to learn who each other is. And there was a Black IQ test. I couldn't answer any of the questions. I had absolutely no idea because they were all based on that. We gave that IQ test to his mother and she got 90% of it right because she grew up on that farm among African Americans and she was part of her life. And, we talk about the social media that we have now and how it's dividing us. Well, we need to look at what TV did. Because if you look back on TV and commercials and things, until Obama was president, there were not a lot of African Americans in commercials at all. And then as soon as he got to be president, as it got along, and now it's stunning to me because I used to place commercials when I worked in broadcasting. The number of commercials that have minorities in them. I mean, it was just a number you never would have seen. And that's just who they were told to sell to. And that's why I'm interested in, if we're going to start to rearrange social media and for kids, and I think we should. I can't imagine going to school with some of the kids I went through and the stuff they would say to you face to face on the playground, them having an electronic way to work their way into your lives. To me, no.
It's a lot. Yeah. It's a lot that they're going through. Having to, there was a lot of anxiety already in the way that our schools are structured. That these kiddos have, especially if they're sensitive and they know what's going on and they're seeing things, they're hearing things, and they're being told that they're wrong. But but then they get in there and they're feeling all the anxiety that everybody else is feeling. And it just builds on itself if you're sensitive. So it's a lot. it's not just what they're seeing, but it's what they're feeling too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
what people are telling them is real. I have the distinct pleasure of never having to watch anything about the Kardashians unless it happened to be on a talk show and they showed up and I couldn't get to the dial fast enough to move it.
Yeah. Yeah. Rose says, no offense intended, but I'm a redneck. But did 1/3 of America's rednecks become MAGA?
No, there's a lot of white collar workers that are MAGA, dear. Do not believe the hatred.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was telling Teri I watched the movie Hacks, and there's a scene in it where a woman who's a lesbian, she's actually bisexual. She runs into a woman and they start to get close, and it's at a golf tournament, and it ends up the woman who is seducing her is a Republican, and this girl is so obviously so socially aware. She's one of the hacks, and when she bitches her out about how can you be bisexual and be a Republican, and the woman said, well, what makes you think you have bisexuality defined? I mean, we do it all over the place, guys. They don't fit our thing of them. If we don't treat it with open-mindedness and grace, you're going to get pushed into a corner.
Yeah. There's going to be, I think, we've talked about the turbulence on the planet and everything coming to the head, and that we're having a lot of Earth events.
Right.
And that's going to continue, because the one thing that happens when that happens is everybody's on an even playing field, and like somebody's going to save you in that storm or whatever's going on, and they're not going to ask first, like, well, what color are you, or what do you how did you vote?
Mm-hmm.
Or who do you like? It's going to be, let me help you.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. It's kind of an opportunity that we're being given if we don't take another opportunity. So
anyway, we probably didn't help you solve anything. We may have given you stuff to think about. That's kind of where I am. I mean, Venus is square Saturn today. Saturn is laying down the law, and Venus is being open and loving and feeling, and those parts of ourselves are at war with each other right at the moment. For everyone, that's everybody in the sky has the same problem.
Wow.
And what else you got going this week, Teri, before we cut off?
Tomorrow, Richie's going to be on my channel, Richie's Reach, and we're going to talk about, I just got back from Sedona, and we're going to talk about the Sedona retreat that we were on and new awakenings. Yeah.
Very good. I am going to have my regular show at 1 tomorrow, and I was thinking about talking about some of this stuff, but now I've talked about it here, so I'll find something else. It may just be an open reading show. It just may be bring your questions and we'll figure it out. I am starting up my year-long meetings from January 1st of 2025 to December 31st of 2025. You can go to my website, www.crystaldirections.com, and find this space to sign up for that. I also do other types of readings, 3-month regular, past life, and I'm still teaching my class with Jeffrey. And I'm bound and determined that by the time I'm doing the year-long readings, my hands work. So,
oh, I hope so. I hope you're feeling better.
Yeah, and everybody, if you haven't voted yet, over 27% of Texas voters have already voted.
And I think your son said that Texas might change this year because of the age group, right?
Oh, it's going to change. It's the fact this many people are voting, and the problem wasn't that Texas wasn't a blue state. If you went down the street, you met more blue people than others. The Reds ones had guns, so you didn't tend to talk to them too much. But yeah, it's age and it's women. Between January 1st of 2024 and September 1st of 2024, over 580,000 new voters. This wasn't people changing their thing from one address to, these were new voters that had never voted before. And that probably sounds like a large number if you're in most states. In Texas, it's still kind of but it means there are a lot more. And that means nobody's targeting them. Nobody's going after them. Nobody knows how to find them. They're finding, I'm talking to friends of mine that are out working in the field. They're finding the people who will help them learn how to campaign. These are people who they didn't feel like their vote mattered because of how the state was structured. I think they now, if 2016 gave us a nightmare of a president, it did teach people the horror of if you don't vote, because that's what pissed me off the day after the orange one was proclaimed president. I wasn't angry at the people who voted for him because they liked him and they voted for him. I was angry at all the AHs I knew had not bothered to get up because my vote won't make a difference. And actually in Wisconsin, one change of a vote in each precinct would have made a difference in him winning or losing. So don't believe, and I remember sitting at my desk and saying that to somebody who was there. And I said, I know you went and voted because, you brought in your little I voted sticker and stuff. But there were people in the store I worked in who I had registered to vote, explained to them where to go vote, told them what the whole process would be if they went to vote, walked them all the way through it. And one of the women there didn't vote. And finally she came up and said, I'm tired of you saying about people who didn't vote. How bad can it get? And I said, I don't know, Janelle, but my feeling is it's going to get really bad. And she said, well, it's just because you lost and blah, blah, blah. And she and I didn't talk much after that. When COVID started, I didn't go read it. I've read in the store one day since COVID hit. But I had to go in early in the COVID when you could go out if you had this masks and all that stuff. And I went into the store to pick up a check because I'd left some things in the store and they'd sold them for me. And she was behind the counter and she had a mask on. And I'd heard she really hated wearing the masks from other people at the store. And I just looked at her and I said, okay, how bad can it get? And she just had a tear rolling down her cheek. And she said, I never could have imagined it would get this bad.
Yeah.
And I said, when we all don't take part, that's what happened.
Yeah. So sad. So sad.
Yeah. And that's back when I was still being mean, guys. I'm not mean to people.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for being here.
Okay. And I'm going to stop it now. Bye.
Bye.